Hello, everyone. Welcome to our inaugural Brighthour Foundation Leadership Pipeline podcast. I am joined by a dear friend, colleague, and board member, Drew. Hello, Drew. How are you doing?
Hey, Seppi, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for, actually, thank you for just being you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a friend, but also a friend to really our whole ecosystem here. Doesn't matter who kind of meets you. You are you, and always being there to kind of support us and be a friend. Tell us a little bit about you for those of you that might not know who Drew is yet. Tell us a little bit about Drew and what's going on in your world right now.
Absolutely. Name's Drew Seyfried. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Father's in healthcare. He's a primary care physician who owned and operated his own practice for a long time. So I've been very close to healthcare my entire life. For work, I work for HC Tech. My work centered around talent acquisition, healthcare managed services, and professional services, career development, and helping people connect to meaningful opportunities in healthcare. I've had the opportunity to work with candidates at different stages of their careers, from people trying to break into the new field to experienced professionals looking for their next leadership opportunities. I've also worked closely with organizations that are trying to solve real workforce challenges, especially as healthcare becomes more digital and data driven. So in my current work, I'm very close to the needs of healthcare organizations. I see firsthand how important it is to have the right technology, talent in place, whether it's supporting applications, infrastructure, cybersecurity, service desk, project work, or broader digital transformation. That gives me a front row view of how talent strategy impacts healthcare operations.
And ultimately impacts quality of patient care when those are not aligned.
That's ultimately what we're all here for.
Yeah, that's our North Star. Yeah, very much the North Star. And I think what keeps our ecosystem together. Everybody or anybody could be doing some things in variability, but our North Star really does bring us back together and to really try to solve things together. Um, so back to your question or the statement you made about talent acquisition, which very much aligns with our whole purpose and mission around Brighthour and how we prepare the future talent, right? Or future professionals. Um, you started talking about this. What are some of the biggest challenges organizations face today in attracting and developing our top talent?
Well, that's a great question. From my perspective, the biggest challenges is that organizations are still trying to solve modern workforce problems with an old playbook.
Mm,
So for many years, talent acquisition has been treated more as a transaction. A role opens, recruiter finds the candidate, a manager makes a hire, and everyone moves on. That approach isn't really working anymore, especially in healthcare and technology where change is constant. The systems are super complex. The cost of a talent gap can affect organizations, clinicians, and ultimately, like we talked about earlier, the patient experience.
mm-hmm.
So, the organizations that are struggling the most are not necessarily the ones with the weakest employer brand or the lowest compensation. They're often the ones that are not connected to workforce strategy, to business
Mm-hmm.
strategy. So, they're asking, how do we fill this role? When really the better question is, what capability do we need to build, protect, or scale? So, that shift matters. In healthcare IT, for example, you may have a need for specialized EHR support, application expertise, service desk coverage, project leadership, cybersecurity awareness, operational discipline, and people who understand the clinical environment. But you might not need all of those capabilities at the same time and in the same way or permanently inside your walls. There's a lot of different things you can look at there. So I think the future belongs to the organizations that can blend the internal talent and external expertise with flexible staffing, managed services, and career development into one workforce ecosystem. The second challenge is developing and attracting, or is the development. Attracting talent gets the headline, but developing the talent is where the competitive advantages is created. People want more than just a job description. Like you and me, they want the path. They want to know,
Yes.
can I grow here? Will someone invest in me? Will I be exposed to meaningful work? Organizations that answer those questions clearly, they're going to be the ones that come out on top. The organizations that do not, they'll continue to lose good people, and even after they successfully recruit them, they won't be able to retain them. So the real challenge isn't just finding talent, it's really designing the environment where talent can perform and they can grow and they can stay, most importantly.
Yes, well said. And retention of our workforce development and retention of our amazing staff really helps build sustainability and optimization and a lot of those things that we talk about. But it's so hard to do if you're in flux or if you're constantly trying to figure out how to keep the lights on or how to deal with the maintenance of something because your staff is not completely up to speed on certain basic things, that you could create more seamless SOPs when you do build your staff and your workforce team to the next level. It's that level of commitment and investment. It's a huge gap in a lot of areas for a variety of different reasons that you mentioned. And our leaders, for sure, have a lot on their shoulders to address everything you just said, prioritize it, figure out what's first, what's second, and how to address all of it. It's a lot. Now, if we were to flip all that, Drew, on the other side, from the uh, early or emerging leader perspective, right? As they're listening to you, and they're trying to figure out how they can fit into all of this, right? And how do they even get the door open and be able to illustrate the value and the value add they bring? So, what are some of those skills, experiences, or attributes that employers consistently are looking for um, so that our emerging leaders can prepare themselves or highlight it better?
Yeah, another great question. So, the leaders employers are seeking today aren't just technical experts. They're translators. And I think that's absolutely critical. And by that, I mean that they can translate between technology and operations, between IT and clinicians, between strategy and execution, and between the way systems can do and what the business actually needs. So in healthcare specifically, the most valuable leaders understand that technology is not the destination. Better access, better workflows, better data, better clinician experience, and better patient care are the destination. As you mentioned earlier, that's our North Star. So, of course, technical competency matters, but the employers need people who understand, the EHRs, the data, applications, infrastructure, delivery, the AI tools, which has been a hot button issue, as well as digital transformation. But the differentiator is judgment. As you mentioned earlier, can you prioritize? Can you communicate under pressure? Can you lead through ambiguity? And can you make complex issues understandable to non-technical stakeholders? The emerging leaders who stand out usually have 5 attributes from what I've seen. First, they're curious. They don't want to just learn a system. They want to learn the business around the system. Next, they're resilient because healthcare and technology both move fast and the work can be very pressure or under a lot of pressure. So leaders have to stay steady when the environment is not. Third, they're collaborative. The days of siloed leadership, they're over. Everyone is working together hand in hand. So the best leaders build bridges across the teams. The fourth thing is they're outcome focused. It's very critical here. Everyone's interested in outcomes. So they don't measure success by activity. They really measure it by the impact that it's having on the organization. And finally, they have a service mindset. In healthcare, every ticket, every project, every implementation, every optimization effort eventually connects back to a patient, a clinician, or a care team. So the leaders who understand that bringing a different level of accountability to the work are going to excel. So, that's where employers are really looking for. They're looking for people who combine the technical fluency with the human-centered leadership.
You better go coin that. I love it, those 5 attributes. You better go coin it. I'm going to be chasing you on that one. That's great. That was very well summarized. even if you're in a role and you want to remain successful in it, being able to demonstrate those with your audience, whether it's your peers in that role or whoever leadership team board that you're communicating to, being able to articulate those attributes and be able to shift to that type of culture, I think will either help get you to where you're trying to get your message across, and furthermore, really build that culture of everything you said, whether it's collaboration or coordination. You made me think of my 3 C's, Drew. I love my 3 C's, which I always, it's the basics. It's nothing no one has thought of and nobody says, but coordination, collaboration, and communication, right? Those three, I think, are basics. Basic PM, right? And basic, even if you're doing something personally in your life. But when you don't take or invest in some of the basics, no matter how busy we are, I think we pay for it later on down the line and in some fashion. So back to our careerist and those kind of looking to us to kind of share a little bit more about tips or tricks. How can you further define what separates a candidate who is able to successfully transition into a career and those that struggle? So you talked about your attributes, but taking it one step further, where can they better focus on how to better illustrate these attributes or market themselves so that it's more visible that they have these skills?
Yeah. Well, the people who successfully transition into new careers usually understand that reinvention is not just about gaining a new skill, it's about building a new identity. So, that's a big distinction here. Many people enter a career development program thinking, I need to complete this course, I need to get my resume updated and apply for the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those things matter, but they're only part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The candidates who succeeds start thinking differently. They begin to see themselves as problem solvers in a new field. They learn the language of the industry, they build confidence through practice, and they seek feedback, and they get comfortable, most importantly, being uncomfortable. Because when you're transitioning, that's going to be something that you're going to live in for quite some time.
Sure.
So, career transition requires humility and discipline at the same time. The humility to say, I have more to learn, and the discipline to keep showing up even when it feels uncertain. Because there's going to be plenty of uncertainty as you're transitioning. The candidates who struggle often underestimate the behavioral side of the transition. They may focus heavily on the technical training, but avoid the networking, the mock interviews, or real world applications, or just the personal branding aspect as well, which is huge in this market. They may have to wait until they feel completely ready, but the readiness is rarely a single moment. It's really built through repetition. So the candidates who succeed also know how to connect their past experiences with their future direction. So someone coming from, say, customer service, operations, education, healthcare administration, or any other field, they might think they're starting from zero, but that's really not the case. They may already have the communication skills, the empathy, the process discipline, the problem-solving ability, stakeholder management, or the resilience that's needed. The key is really learning how to translate those strengths into the language of the new career. So learning that language is definitely critical. So that is why I think career development programs are so powerful when they combine training, coaching, mentorship, interview prep, and practical experience. So for example, the careerist actually describes a model of helping people without traditional tech or coding backgrounds entering technology through structured training and career support. So another thing that I love about what we do at Brighthour is we offer a lot of those tracks. But I think the biggest separator is the mindset. Successful career changers don't ask who's going to give me a chance. They ask, how do I demonstrate that I'm ready to become the person that this opportunity requires?
Wow, I love that. And I'll put in a little plug too in regards to opportunities that we have in our ecosystem here. You focused on repetition and doing things that you might be uncomfortable with. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. If it's doing mock interviews, doing different things, you can always turn it around and still be a mentor. And that mentor relationship sometimes works both ways. You might be sharing knowledge and aspects of needs for your mentee, but as a mentor, you can also gain experiences and focus and find ways to enhance things that are areas of need for you as well. So there's a lot of ways to get involved with your ecosystem, with whatever organization that you relate to or you're comfortable with or you have already engaged with. But go one step further, get involved with their mentorship programs or get involved with different activities that are hands-on and connect with other like-minded individuals that are trying to grow, because we all have something to share or give to someone else and learn something from a colleague, a peer, or someone else. And there's just a lot of ways to do exactly what you just advised. So we talked about a little bit of our ecosystem, and there's a lot of wonderful associations and organizations here in Georgia that we're engaged with, and I really am proud of. There's a lot of great ones. What is your perspective on the next evolution of what our organization, what you would recommend an organization or educational institutions in their programs, or that our industry leaders can do to build upon their stronger leadership skills and strengthen our workforce pipeline at this day and age that we're in right now?
Good one. I believe workforce development has to become a shared responsibility. Mm-hmm. It's no longer a single organization, a school, an employer, or an industry leader that can solve the pipeline challenges alone. So organizations need to be more intentional about defining the capabilities they need, not just the roles they need to fill. They also need to create more entry points. Not every future leader is going to arrive through a traditional path. Some will come from boot camps, career transition programs, community colleges, military backgrounds, clinical operations, customer support, or any adjacent industries. We have to keep looking for talent, if we keep looking for talent in only the places that we've always looked, we'll keep getting the same workforce gaps. I see this time and time again with many of the clients I work for. They come very set in their ways about, I need this one specific person, and they're not willing to break that mold. So, educational institutions need to stay closer to the market as well. Curriculum can't be built in isolation from what employers actually need. Students need practical experience. They need exposure to real world work or real workflows. They need mentorship opportunities and understanding how work gets done inside of a modern healthcare and technology environments. Because I think there's a gap there between the education and the real world application. As far as industry leaders go, I think they have a responsibility to connect the two. We need help to define what job ready really means. We need to create apprenticeships, mentorships, pathways, internships, or even returnships, new buzzword, but project-based learning opportunities and partnerships that give the talent a bridge from learning to contributing. I also think that we need to rethink leadership development. Too often we wait until someone has a title before we teach them how to lead. And I think that is backwards. Leadership behaviors should be developed earlier. As you mentioned, communication, accountability, influence, adaptability, the decision-making, really the emotional intelligence from a leadership perspective, and the ability to lead across complexity. So, in healthcare IT, the need is especially urgent because health systems are balancing digital transformation, cost pressures, clinician burnout, patient expectations, cybersecurity risk, and operational complexity.
From all directions.
Mm-hmm. So that requires a stronger bench of leaders who understand both the technology and the mission of healthcare. So I think, the future of workforce pipeline will not be built by hiring alone, but it will be built through the ecosystem of employers, educators, service partners, staffing partners, mentors, and industry leaders. They're all working together to create that access, the readiness, and the mobility within inside the organizations.
Right. And I know we're not saying that anyone knows it all or is supposed to know it all. But I do think, back to your point, we do need to be asking those questions and being able to identify the greatest area of need, which might be a little different from one organization to another, and being able to bring the right players together to create that strategy and that culture of whatever that direction might be um, at that moment. And it's not, again, one of those things that you do when you put it up or file it away, because it might change again in 6 to 8 months based on whatever you learn from that and whatever else that might become a need for that entity or organization. It's ever changing, um, just like any industry. I get it. We're not unique. However, we do have a unique factor with our patients and our community that makes what we need even more special. Um, Drew, again, thank you so much for spending some time with me and talking. But as we close out, and for those individuals and our students, more specifically, as they're looking to advance their career, and as you know, students might be in their early part of their career, there might be mid-career emerging leaders, maybe they're transitioning. This is a transitioned, industries and careers and all types of backgrounds. Um, and they're advancing, whether into healthcare, healthcare IT, whether it's a leadership role or not. What is the single most important piece of advice that you would offer to them?
That's a great one. Love this question. So, my advice is simple: become known for solving problems bigger than your job description.
Yeah.
That is really the difference between someone who's good in a role and someone who's ready for leadership.
Yeah.
Early in your career, you're often evaluated on how well you complete an assigned task. But
Mm-hmm.
as you grow, people start evaluating something different. They want to know, do you see around the corners? Do you make the team better? Do you communicate clearly? Do you bring solutions, not just issues? And do people trust you when things get difficult? Leadership is not just something that suddenly begins when you get promoted. Leadership begins the moment you take ownership.
Yeah.
So that does not mean that pretending to have all the answers. In fact, the best leaders are often the ones that are the best learners. They ask better questions, they listen carefully, they understand the context, and they know when to speak, when to support, and when to challenge the room. For everyone trying to advance, I would say this: don't just build a resume, build a reputation. Be the person who follows through, be the person who can simplify the complexity or the complex issues, and be the person who helps others succeed. And something that I love: be the person who connects the work to a larger purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we all would really need, is something that brings value into our work. So titles can be given, credibility has to be earned, though. And credibility is built every single day in the way that you show up, the way you solve problems, and the way people feel after working with you.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. Reliability, consistency, being there for each other. And we all have different ambitions in our careers and our goals, but be present in what you're trying to do today, where you are today, and identify how you can be a part of that solution. And it might look different today than what it will in a week, but all of that will build out who you are and why people will come to you, whether it's for partnership or come to you and see you as a leader and rely on your input and guidance. And at the end of the day, that's why we're here in healthcare. We want to be able to collaborate, solve our issues, and even if it's one step out of a time, work towards what can bring value to our community and our patients. Drew, as a true partner to everything we do, I do, thank you for your time. Thank you for your friendship. And I will talk to you later.
It's been a pleasure, Seppi. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.